If you've recently bought a bike, either from your local bike shop or an online retailer like bikesonline.com, it's likely that your bike came with inner tubes in the tires. Remember them? These thin, stretchy, rubbery things. Well, here at the Loam Wolf, when we get bikes in, the very first thing that we do is convert the tires over to tubeless. Most modern mountain bikes come with tubeless tires and tubeless rims. That makes making the transition to tubeless a lot easier. So if that interests you, in this video, we're gonna walk you through how to make sure that your tire and wheel setup is tubeless compatible and how to go through the process of getting it tubeless set up. So there are a couple benefits to running tubeless. First is that it allows you to have a lot more control over the tire pressures that you want to run. The other is that if you do get a puncture, you're gonna have tire sealant in there. So there's a good chance that as you keep rolling, that sealant is gonna go in and fill up that hole that you just punctured. And so maybe you'll have to stop, put a little bit more air in, but you're not having to pull the tire off of the wheel and replace it with a tube. Beyond a tubeless compatible tire and rim, you're going to need rim tape, sealant, and valve stems. We know that this Schwalbe Hansdampf is tubeless compatible because, well, it says here on the side of the tire. So it's gonna have some sort of indication. This says TL easy, sometimes it might say tubeless ready. So before we move on to setting up this tire tubeless, we're gonna inspect this rim and make sure that it is tubeless ready. So as we look at this rim, fortunately, it is tubeless ready. It has rim tape from the factory that came installed. So you can see where the tape comes around and joins right there. All of the spokes are covered. That's really what the rim tape is doing, is it's making sure that when you put air in here, it's not going to leak out through the spoke nipples. You can get rim tape at bikesonline.com. Make sure you get the right width. Usually it's going to say this rim tape will fit a bike inner width of 28 to 32, but just double check and make sure. So the next thing you're going to need is tubeless valve stems. So pretty simple, valve stem just goes on in, push it through. Now, important, make sure you do this before you put the tire back on and get it all going, because then you'll be taking the tire back off. All right, so quick hack, take your tire lever, push it down on the valve stem, press down with your hand, and then really put some pressure on it and screw that in to just really make sure that the valve stem is set down into the wheel and into the tape, making it airtight. One thing you want to do before you start putting things back together is make sure things are clean. The bead wall on this is pretty dirty. The rim has been on the ground, getting junk on it. We want to make sure that there's nothing in between the tire and the rim that's going to prevent them from sealing up. I like to use just some rubbing alcohol and a relatively clean rag and give everything a good wipe down. So next up, we're gonna get ready to put this tire back on the rim. Now, probably the most important thing you can do right now is make sure you are putting the tire on in the correct direction, right? Tires have a direction that they roll. Now, with a company like Schwalbe, they have put this blue line on there. I think some of their other tires might have a red line on it, but they have this line, and that line is always gonna go on the disc side. Not all companies have that, but they usually have some sort of arrow to indicate which direction the tire goes. So it's nice to line up the valve stem with the logo. That way, when you need to put some air in your tire, you're not searching around trying to find where the valve is. You just know it's right at the logo. Additionally, if you get a really bad flat and you have to like take things apart and potentially there's damage, you can go back and know where the puncture is on the tire and where it would correspond with your wheel if you have these things lined up. So now you're just going to want to work the tire back over the rim Depending on the brands, the brand of tire, the brand of rim, the tolerance can be quite a bit tighter. You can see this Hans Dampf Schwalbe was pretty easy to get on there. So boom, right now I have 1/2 of the tire back on the rim. It's generally easier to start away from the valve and work your way down. A lot of times when you get about halfway, this becomes a full body workout. It gets pretty tricky because as you go on one side, the bead likes to come off of the other side. But there. Sometimes the bead likes to set on the rim wall, and that just creates tighter tolerances. So as you're going around, you can kind of squeeze it to make sure that that tire bead on both sides is sitting down into the valley of the rim. It's not always easy with every tire. You might have to get tire levers out and really work them on there. Quick tip is if you're going with a tire lever and one side just keeps coming out, get out some zip ties or a strap and zip tie that side down so that it doesn't continue to come out, and that way kind of frees up one of your hands to be able to work that tire lever and get the rest of the tire onto the rim. All right, so now the tire's on there, we're gonna go ahead and seat the tire without adding sealant. If something goes wrong, like maybe I put rim tape in there and it just wasn't sealing down very well, now I have to take the tire back off, and if I've already dumped a bunch of sealant in there, that's gonna be a mess. So we're gonna go ahead and set this tire up. First thing we need to do is we're gonna take this valve core out. We take the valve core out so it allows max amount of airflow into the tire. This valve stem came with this cool little valve core tool. There's a lot of different valve core tools on multi-tools and whatnot. But you just get that out of there. All right, we're gonna go ahead and put some air in there. We're gonna be listening for a couple of pops. Those pops indicate that the tire has fully seated. After that, we're gonna go ahead and listen for leaks to ensure that indeed the tire is fully seated. I am not hearing any leaks. It would be pretty apparent if you had a leak. Similar to a tube, you'll hear some sort of whistle. Now that it seems like the tire is in fact holding air and that our rim tape was fine and our tire was good and clean, we're gonna let the air out, we're gonna put some sealant in, and then wrap this job up. Tire sealant like this is Schwalbe Dock Blue, comes in this really big, this is 500 milliliters. You don't need this much, you need this much, 60 milliliters for one full-size 29-inch tire. We're gonna go ahead and fill this up. Tire sealant has been known to make a bit of a mess, so yeah, don't get it on your clothes, don't get it on the rug. It is always good to be prepared for it, and that's actually why we prefer not to put it in until after we have got the tire seated. So you can also see, again, tire sealant makes a mess. You can see that we've put a rag down. It's hard to get out of rugs. It's hard to get out of carpets. Sometimes it's even hard to get out of concrete if you don't get on it really fast. As we've let air out of the tire, the bead has come off of the rim. Not a big deal. We're gonna go ahead and put the tire sealant in through the valve. We already know that this tire is gonna seat really well because it did. And so after we put the tire sealant in, we'll just hit it with some more air and then it should hold. So I'm just gonna tip this up and just give it some gentle squeezes. If you squeeze it way too hard, you'll get it everywhere. And that's just letting the sealant go directly down into the tire there. All right, so we are ready to get air back into this tire, make sure that it's set, and get our valve core back in there. Make sure that your valve core is close so that when you have a hand on the tire, you're not wrestling around trying to reach for something. It's just right there. Make sure that the tool that you need to screw it in is close as well. Let's get to it. Just gonna now carefully get this core back in. And you can hear that the air stopped, but we want to make sure that it's in there all the way. So let's put our little tool on it. Again, this little tool just came with the valve stem. Snug it up, and we can get this tire and wheel back on the bike. So last thing to do before we install it back on the bike is it'd be good to make sure we have the correct tire pressure. With using the compressor, we're pretty hesitant to fill it all the way up because it's hard to tell how much air is actually going in with that. So we want to get a floor pump with a air pressure gauge. Squeezing this, I can feel it's pretty low. I'm going to want to get a floor pump, fill it up to, I don't know, maybe 26, 28 PSI, whatever I like. That way also, it gives us a little extra time just to ensure that, yep, everything is set up correctly. We don't have any leaks. We don't have any problems, because it will not be fun to get it back on the bike and then all of a sudden we have a leak, we have an issue, sealant is spraying everywhere, it's getting in our caliper, it's getting on our rotor. That's going to be bad news. Be sure to spin the wheel or maybe go on a quick ride. You don't want all this tire sealant just sitting at the bottom. You want to make sure that it gets all around the wheel, filling in any holes that might be there, sealing everything up. We are set up tubeless. This was a fairly painless process. It's not always like that. You know, sometimes you might run into some issues. Maybe the rim tape's not adhering very well. Maybe the tire bead is not wanting to sit on the rim very well. Maybe you didn't clean it. Let us know in the comments, what issues do you think that you're running into? We use a lot of the stuff that we already had around here, but rim tape, valves, sealant, tire levers, pumps, literally everything that you need to set your bike up tubeless, you can get on bikesonline.com. Thanks for watching. Let us know in the comments how your tubeless setup went. Happy trail.